The smell of cinnamon always takes me back. That day, I was baking her favorite snickerdoodles, the way I had when she was small and a cookie could fix any hurt. The warmth of the oven filled my tidy kitchen, a sanctuary I'd built after years of chaos. She stood by the island, scrolling on her phone, and without looking up, she said it. "It's no wonder you have such a scarcity mindset, Mom. When you grow up like you did, clutching every penny, I guess it gets in your bones." The words hung in the fragrant air, turning the sweet smell sour. My hands stilled in the dough. In that moment, I realized my past wasn't a story I'd told her. It was ammunition she'd been stockpiling. My life now is quiet, orderly. A modest house paid for. A garden I tend. A piece I carved out with my own 2 hands after my husband, Daniel, passed a decade ago. We weren't rich, but we were stable. Our daughter, Chloe, grew up in this safety. She went to a good college, landed a corporate job in the city. She embraced a world of sleek surfaces and visible success. A world I never knew at her age. My childhood was a different country. Empty cupboards, constant moving, the kind of fear that lives in your stomach. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through night school. I met Daniel, and we built something solid from that shaky ground. I told Chloe these stories not for pity, but for context. So she'd know where she came from. The resilience in her blood. I thought it was a legacy. I saw the pride in her eyes turn, slowly, into something else. A subtle embarrassment. Then a quiet contempt for the struggle she'd never had to endure. The moral fault line wasn't greed. It was entitlement. The belief that a comfortable life was a right. And that my difficult past was a flaw, not a foundation. The real fracture came at her engagement party. She and her fiancé, Mark, hosted it at a chic downtown loft. I wore my best dress, a simple blue silk I'd saved for. I was talking to Mark's parents, lovely people who'd built a manufacturing business from nothing. We were sharing laughs about early struggles. Chloe floated over, a glass of champagne in hand, and slid her arm through mine. Her smile was bright, but her grip was tight. "Mom's telling her how I survived on instant noodles stories again," she said, her voice a melodic tease. "We have to indulge her. It's her party trick." Mark's mother's smile faltered. The warmth drained from my face. Chloe gave a light laugh, but her eyes were sharp. "Don't worry, she turned out okay. Mostly." It was a public dressing down, disguised as a daughter's affectionate joke. That night, as I drove home alone, the city lights blurring, I understood. My history was now her punchline. I had handed her my heart, and she was using it for target practice. After that, the jabs became our new language. When I suggested a sensible, budget-friendly wedding venue, she sighed. "There's your trauma talking again." When I hesitated to contribute to an extravagant honeymoon fund, a sum that represented 6 months of my utilities, she said, "You hoard money because you're afraid of being poor again." It's sad. The words trauma and scarcity mindset became her clinical diagnoses for my every cautious choice. The private cost was a deep, aching loneliness. Our phone calls became brief updates. My quiet house felt quieter. I'd sit at my kitchen table, the very spot she'd wounded me, and trace the grain of the wood. I saved receipts for everything, a lifetime habit, but now they felt like evidence of the clutching she mocked. I made simple meals for one, and sometimes I just pushed the plate away, my appetite gone. This was the real family drama. Not a shouting match, but a slow, silent erosion of a bond one thought was unbreakable. The shift came unexpectedly. I was helping her sort through some old boxes in her apartment before the wedding. She was in the other room on a work call, her voice stressed and sharp. "I don't care how you secure the funding, just do it. This deal cannot fall apart." I lifted a stack of her childhood books. Beneath them was a familiar, faded notebook, my old journal from my night school years. I froze. I'd given it to her years ago when she was struggling in college, so she'd see that persistence pays off. Curious, I flipped it open. It wasn't my writing. In the margins, next to my desperate notes about thermodynamics and rent payments, were her annotations, in different colored inks from over the years. Next to a passage about my hunger, she'd written, dramatic. By a paragraph on my fear. LOL, so extra. But the most recent note, in sharp black pen, circled a line where I'd written, I will build a life so secure, my children will never feel this fear. Her annotation read, and then she'll guilt-trip me with it forever. The journal wasn't a treasured relic to her. It was a case file, building evidence against the woman I used to be. I placed the journal back exactly as I found it. My heart was calm. The hurt had burned down to a cool, clear ember of resolve. I would not fight fire with fire. I would not shout. I would build. My plan was dignified, simple, and entirely lawful. I called my financial advisor. I revised my will, not to disinherit, but to restructure. The bulk of my estate, the house, my savings, would now go into a tightly managed trust. It would provide a safety net, but not a blank check. The capital would eventually go to grandchildren's education, or to a charity supporting single mothers furthering their education. Next, I took the funds I'd saved for her wedding contribution and invested them in myself. I enrolled in a landscape design course, something I'd dreamed of for years. I quietly transferred the title of a small piece of land Daniel had left me into my name solely, ensuring it was separate and secure. I didn't announce any of this. I simply acted, moving with the quiet certainty of someone who has survived storms before and knows how to batten down the hatches. This was my quiet countermove in our emotional story. I would protect the future I'd built, while finally embracing the present for myself. The confrontation wasn't a scene from a movie. It was a conversation. Chloe came over, a month before the wedding, her face pinched with stress. The venue costs had overrun. She asked directly this time, for a significant sum to cover the shortfall. I can't do that, honey, I said, my voice even. I was pouring tea. Why not? She asked, frustration bubbling. You have it. It's just your fear talking again. I placed the cup in front of her. No, I said, meeting her eyes. It's my wisdom talking. The wisdom I earned from the past you so often mock. That money represents my security, my peace. And I've decided that my peace is not negotiable. I then told her, gently, about the trust. That she would be cared for, but not bankrolled. That my assets were now aligned with my values, security, growth, and legacy, not performance. She stared at me, stunned. You're punishing me? I'm parenting you, I said softly. Even now, I'm teaching you that actions have consequences, and that respect isn't a conditional gift you give only to people whose pasts are tidy. The power in the room had invisibly, irrevocably shifted. The realization dawned on her face not as anger first, but as a dawning, awful clarity. She had expected the mother from my past, the one who would sacrifice everything. She was finally meeting the woman of my present, the one who had learned what to hold on to. The wedding was beautiful. I attended, smiled, and danced. The air between us was clear if cool. A boundary had been drawn, not in anger but in sad necessity. Our relationship today is careful. We are learning a new way to be. She no longer makes those cutting remarks. I think my calm, unshakable response frightened her more than any scream ever could. I am expanding my gardening into a small consultancy. The land is becoming a community plot. I found in protecting myself a new purpose. I offered a small act of grace. I told her the trust could be accessed for truly urgent needs, with mutual agreement. I didn't want to break her. I wanted her to build her own strength as I had. The lesson I learned is this. You can make peace with your past, but you must never let someone else use it to wage war on your present. If this real-life story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments. For more calm reflections on family, healing, and quiet strength, consider subscribing to. Thank you for listening.